Our chess engine is really starting to take shape. By the end of this video, our program will have everything it needs for the user to play a complete game of chess. Hello everyone, my name is Mike and you're watching Polymath Unlimited. In this series we are programming our own chess engine from scratch in C++. In the last episode, we learned about object-oriented programming and we laid the foundation of the actual chess engine part of our program by building a chessboard class. In this episode, we will expand on that foundation by adding more functionality to our chessboard class in order to implement real chess moves on our board. By the end, the user will be able to play a complete game of chess using our program. Before we do that, though, there's a minor problem we need to fix that I didn't notice last time. If we run the code we wrote last time, we should see that our chessboard pops up with all of its pieces rendered on top of it. If we look closer, though, we will notice that all of the knights and bishops are in the wrong places. I'm honestly not sure how I didn't notice this when I was making the last episode, but fixing it is just as simple as switching the bit boards we are using for the bishops and knights in our chessboard constructor. With that fixed, all of the pieces should start in the right spots. That just goes to show, though, that little mistakes like that can always crop up when you're programming, so watch out for those and make sure to fix them early before they become big problems later. Moving on, in order to make our chessboard class be able to efficiently handle making and undoing moves, we're going to make some minor structural changes to the class. Let's add a struct called boardState to our chessboard.h file. Structs are very similar to classes, but their access specifier defaults to public, meaning that any member of a struct is accessible anywhere outside of that struct, unless we specifically make those members private. This boardState struct will contain 12 bit boards, one for each piece type, 4 Boolean variables to keep track of castling rights, 1 additional bit board to keep track of the en passant target square, and an unsigned 8-bit integer to keep track of whose turn it is. Let's also define some new constants, white and black, to make interfacing with the turn variable easier. Now, instead of having our chessboard class contain 12 bit boards, it will contain an array of board states. This will be represented by a dynamically allocated pointer and an index variable. Conceptually, making moves will consist of pushing a copy of the current board state onto the top of this stack and changing that board state to reflect the move that was made. Undoing moves will be as simple as just changing the stack index to go back to a previous board state. The changes we made to our chessboard class will necessitate changing all of the methods we wrote last time. Luckily, those changes are pretty minor. Anywhere we interacted with the chessboard class's bit boards array, we will need to change this into accessing the top of the state stack and interacting with that state's bit boards. In our constructor, we will also need to allocate memory for the state stack. Allocating 1000 states for our stack should be sufficient for almost any chess game we would want to play, but dynamically allocating this memory will allow us to expand this array later should we need to do so. Since we are dealing with dynamically allocated memory, we should also add a destructor to our chessboard class. In this destructor, we will simply deallocate the memory consumed by the state stack. You might be wondering why I would even bother with dynamic memory allocation here. The truth is, it's probably unnecessary. However, let's take a closer look at our board state struct. We have 13 64-bit integers, 4 Booleans, and 1 8-bit integer. That adds up to a whopping 872 bits of memory needed just to store one board state. For an array of 1000 board states, that's over 100 kilobytes of memory. For most C++ programs running in Windows, the amount of available stack memory allocated to the program is 1 megabyte. This memory is used for all of the function calls, variables, and arrays the program is using. If we were to allocate all 100 kilobytes of our state stack into stack memory, that's quite a large chunk of what we are able to use. Allocating it dynamically, however, does not allocate any memory usage on the stack. Dynamic memory allocation happens on the heap, which is all of the memory outside of our program available for our program to use. My laptop has 16 gigabytes of RAM, which means, theoretically, there would be about 16 gigabytes of heap memory available for my program to use, minus whatever memory is being used by the operating system and any other programs that might also be running. So while allocating the state stack on the stack probably won't hurt anything, allocating on the heap using dynamic memory allocation is preferable to me, simply to err on the side of caution. It also has the added benefit of, if we need to expand the state stack, it's pretty easy to do that with a dynamically allocated array. If we allocated it on the stack, then resizing the array is practically impossible. Anyway, with that rant out of the way, now we can move on to adding move and undo functionality. We will add another struct to our chessboard.h file called move. This struct will store all of the information necessary to uniquely specify a chess move, including which square we are moving from, which square we are moving to, and which piece we are promoting to for pawn promotions. Next, we will add two new methods to our chessboard class, move and undo. The move method will take a move as input and perform that move. Undo will simply undo the last move performed. Note that the move method takes as an argument is passed by constant reference. This means that we are essentially passing the address at which that move lies in computer memory rather than a copy of the move itself. When passing objects as function arguments, it is often much better to do it this way than it is to pass them by value like you would do a normal variable. This is because you have to copy much less information when passing a reference to an object rather than passing the entire object itself, especially if the object is large with lots of attributes, each of which would need to be individually copied over. The const specifier simply specifies that the function the reference is being passed to is not allowed to modify the object it is receiving in any way. This helps ensure that no unintended modifications take place on the object being passed, since any changes the function makes to the object will be reflected into the original object since it is being passed by reference. Now let's implement those methods in the chessboard.cpp class. Undo is very simple. We just decrement the stack index if it is greater than 0. Move will be a bit more involved. Let's start with the basics. First off, we'll push a copy of the top state on the stack to the top of the state stack. Then we'll extract some information from the move. Specifically, we will construct 3 bit boards: from board, to board, and move board. From board will contain a 1 in the square we are moving from, to board will contain a 1 in the square we are moving to, and move board will contain a 1 in both of those squares. We'll also use a moved piece variable to keep track of which piece was moved. This will be useful for promotions, en passant captures, and castling later. Next, we will move the piece. We can do this by using a for loop to loop through all of white's bit boards if it is white's turn, or all of black's bit boards if it is black's turn. We check to see if there is a piece in each bit board on the square we are moving from. If there is, we move that piece by XORing that bit board with the move board we constructed earlier. We will also store which piece we moved into our moved piece variable. Note that we can also save some work here by noting that only one piece can be moved in a given square at a time. So once we have found a piece to move, we don't need to check any of the other bit boards, so we can just break out of the loop. Once the piece has been moved, we need to capture any opposing piece that might be in the square we are moving to. We can do this with another for loop that loops through all of the opponent's bit boards and removes an opposing piece from the square we are moving to if one is there. Once a piece has been moved and captures have happened, we also need to switch whose turn it is. We're not quite done with the move function just yet, since we still need to handle some special moves that might come up in a game of chess. However, for general moves, this is all we need. Let's go back to our main.cpp file and incorporate the move and undo functions into our interface. We'll start by adding a global array of moves called moveStack along with a moveIndex variable. This stack will contain all the previous moves made, allowing us to keep track of them. Now in our mouse function, we will change our movement code to use our chessboard class's new move method. Once we have made a move this way, we simply push that move onto the stack. Running the program now should result in the same behavior we had before. Now that we have an undo function, though, we can put that to use in our interface's keyboard function. Let's make it so that if the user presses backspace, we will undo the previous move. We will also decrement the move index, which will be necessary for what we will do next. Many chess interfaces show the user what the previous move was on the board. In our draw function, right before we draw the chess pieces, we will show the previous move as a green line that connects the square we moved from to the square we moved to. Note that we are using GL line width to set the thickness of this line. Now, when we run the program, we should see that the previous move gets shown to the player, and this even works when we undo moves because of how we have set up the move stack. Now let's add some more code to our chessboard class's move method. There are a few special types of moves we want to be able to do. First, let's implement en passant captures. An en passant capture happens when, after a pawn moves forward 2 spaces on its first move, an opposing pawn next to that pawn may capture it by moving to the space behind it. Implementing this in our code requires adding 2 steps to our move function. First, after moving pieces and performing normal captures, we will see if we are moving into an en passant target square. If so, we check to see if the moved piece was a white or black pawn, and if so, we change the appropriate pawn bit board accordingly to reflect the en passant capture. Once any en passant captures have been done, we also need to update the en passant target square. If we are moving a white or black pawn, and that pawn is moving forward 2 ranks, we need to set the en passant target square to the square directly between the pawn's initial and final squares. In all other cases, we set the en passant target square to 0. Running the program now should let us do en passant captures correctly. If we move a pawn forward 2 spaces, then move an enemy pawn behind the pawn we just moved, it should be captured. Note that since we aren't enforcing the rules of chess yet, we can simply move the pawns wherever we want. This will be a problem for a future video though. For now, we're just making sure that the moves will behave correctly once the rules are enforced. The next type of move we want to be able to do is castling. Castling happens when a king moves horizontally 2 squares away from its starting square. The rook on that side also moves to the adjacent square on the other side of the king. We can implement castling in our move function by first checking if we are moving a white or black king, and then checking the move board to see if we are doing a castling move. If so, we will also update the appropriate rook bit board to move the rook to the correct square. We will also need to update castling rights, since if the king has moved, castling becomes illegal. Also, if a rook has been moved or captured, castling with that rook also becomes illegal. To check for this, we will test the move board we created at the beginning of the move function against 4 bit boards, 1 for each castling right. If any of those checks succeed, then we set the corresponding castling right to false. Testing the program now should reveal that castling works as expected. Again, there are lots of rules here that we aren't enforcing yet. That will come later. For now, we just want to make sure that the moves themselves are functioning properly. The last thing we need to do on our move function is handle promotions. We will do this by simply checking if a move's promotion value is not empty. If it's not, then we simply update the appropriate pawn board depending on whose turn it is, and the bit board corresponding to the piece we are promoting to. Now in our main.cpp file, we need to add some more things to make promotions accessible to the player in our UI. First off, we'll add 2 new global variables called promotex and promoty, initialized to -1. These will let us keep track of whether we need to promote a pawn, and where the promoted pawn is on the board. Then, in our mouse function, after we moved a piece, we need to check to see if we just moved a pawn to the back rank. If so, we will set promotex and promoty to the coordinates of that square. Otherwise, we will reset promotex and promoty to -1. Next, in our draw function, after we have drawn all the chess pieces, we will draw some GUI elements that will allow the player to select a promotion if they need to promote a pawn. If promote y is equal to 0, then we are promoting a white pawn. So we'll draw a black rectangle that covers the promotion square and the 3 squares behind it. We'll also draw a white rectangle slightly larger than the black rectangle underneath it, to give it a nice border. Then, inside this rectangle, we'll draw a white queen, a white rook, a white bishop, and a white knight. If promote y is equal to 7, then we are promoting a black pawn, and we will draw something very similar to the white version, just with the colors swapped around. Testing this new changeout, we should see that when a pawn is moved to the back rank, the promotion box gets drawn in the right place and displays the promotions options to the user. However, the user still can't actually select a promotion. We need to add some more to our mouse function to fix this. In the mouse function, after we calculate the click coordinates, but before we move any pieces, we'll first check to see if we need to promote a piece. If promote y is equal to 0, then we need to promote a white pawn. If promote y is equal to 7, then we need to promote a black pawn. Otherwise, we will move on to our movement code as normal. To promote a white pawn, we will first detect if we are clicking on the right file. If we are, we will check to see if we are clicking on one of the pieces in our promotion box. If we clicked on such a piece, then we will change the promotion value of the move on the top of the move stack, then undo and redo the move and set promote x and promote y to -1. The code for promoting a black pawn will be identical, just with black pieces instead of white pieces and different y coordinates. Testing the program now, we should see that we can promote pieces correctly. Well, we got a lot done in this video. Our GUI is pretty much done, and the user can now technically play a full game of chess against either themselves or another human opponent, in kind of a pass-and-play sort of way. We're far from done, though. Our goal is to make it so that the user can play a game of chess against an automated computer opponent. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that our program understands the rules of chess. We'll start on that next time by adding some more code to our chessboard class that will make it so that the pieces can only move how they should according to the rules. Until then, feel free to play around with this program and see what you can make of it. I have the full code from this video up on my GitHub. The link to that is in the video description if you want to check it out. Have any ideas for features you want to see me put into this program? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all of my subscribers, and I will see you next time.